the R&D stuff was easy, like, because that was easy for me, and I could do it on the weekends, and I could just do it in my own head. It was kind of what you're talking
Hmm.
about. Like, it doesn't require you to sell, like the sales side of things. But I really had as a designer, I had way underappreciated the importance of good sales and salesmanship and just marketing and just understanding that that is a whole world that I had neglected and didn't really put any, not that I didn't put any emphasis on it, but I was like, well, it'll take care of itself. Like this whole idea of like, oh, you build a better mousetrap, right, and the world will beat a path to your door. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know about that. Maybe, we see a couple examples where that does work, like a viral thing that goes crazy, but like those are like one in a million or billion of the entrepreneurs that succeed in that way. All the other folks that are starting their own businesses have to work at it for years to build it up and make it something that's stable and organically grown, right? Like that's hard. That's the real hard work.
You are listening to the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, brought to you by Salty Electrolytes. On this podcast, your host, Riley Rogers, explores the stories of people who get after it, get things done, and earn their salt. You will hear from high achievers who discuss what makes them tick, how they got to where they are today, and where they're headed tomorrow. Perhaps this podcast will help you go earn your salt. Today, I've got Jim Varney with Wavelength Coffee Roasters out in Massachusetts, the great state of Massachusetts, almost exactly opposite end of the United States from where I'm at in Idaho here. We're nearly as far apart as we could be.
Yep.
But Jim approached me about coming on the podcast, and they've launched a new coffee brand, and they got some pretty special things they do that are, we're going to have him tell you about it. So Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So we'll talk about you. Tell us who you are, where you came from, what life was like as a kid.
Oh, wow. Yeah, let's go way back. So, like you mentioned, we're in Massachusetts now. I sort of am born and raised New England person. I grew up in New Hampshire. I went to college in New York State at Syracuse. After school, I came back to the Boston area because I went to school I went to art school. Basically, I'm a designer at heart. So, I loved making things. I loved art, and industrial design was like the thing I loved. I just totally fell in love with it. And Boston is actually one of the best places in the U.S. For product design and development. Like my industry, industrial design, was when I got out of school. So it was a natural fit. Came back here, and I've been living in Massachusetts then ever since like I think 1998. So I've been here for most of my life. Met my wife here and raised a family and everything. I spent 25 plus years in doing product design in that industry, and was worked my way up kind of through the company and became a co-owner. I hit it off really well with the guy who started the company, so he asked me to come on as a partner. So in 2016, I came on. I was a co-owner of the company. So I had 8 years experience in then helping to run and grow that company, which we did. He's a little bit older than me, so in 2024 we had an opportunity to sell the business, and so he had a chance to retire, which was great. And but I, wasn't quite ready to hang up my hat, so to speak. I can only play so much golf, in the summer.
Yeah.
In the winter, I'm sitting around like, well, what am I going to do now? And I was really ready to do something kind of different. And where I had been going with my product design company was in the last several years, I was trying to find opportunities to bring sustainable design in. I've always loved the idea that designers are kind of, sort of the forecasters, that we're helping to envision the future in a lot of ways. And I always loved that about trying to see where things are headed. We were having to adapt to various things in life, or new technologies come up. How does that affect, how we live, and how do we interact with those things? So it's just kind of a natural fit then to go into sustainability, because in a lot of ways it's like trying to envision how we're all going to be living together in the next 100 years, right? Like the world is changing so fast. How do we adapt to it? And I had some success with it, some failures. Like it was always tough working with clients to kind of bring some of that stuff in, because some people were really passionate about it, other ones weren't. But so when I left that company, I knew though in my heart that that was something I really wanted to focus on, but I just didn't know how. And my wife was also in a place in her career in education where she was kind of ready to do something different. And so I think she suggested, she's like, well, what about doing something like coffee? And like, what about doing something in coffee? We'd always loved it. I had been doing some home roasting for a while, like a lot of folks do. And so I started to fall down the rabbit hole and just did a lot of research into the coffee industry. There was that tech geeky side of me, which really started to get interested in all the technology that's involved and a lot of the new stuff coming out. But I also saw that there was an opportunity to do something different in the market, and that we had, at the ground level, at farm level, all around the world, coffee is changing dramatically, and everybody understands that they're having to come up with new ways to grow coffee, to process coffee, new places to grow it, new varieties to grow. Like it's in this process of changing to match the changing climate that's around the farmers. Like they can't avoid it because they can see it changing. But here, like in the US and in other like rich countries, like especially coffee roasters, like we're kind of just sort of going through the motions, and it felt like doing things that we'd always been doing the same way. So it seemed like there was a chance now for us to, like, that designer side of me, to design then the roastery around something like a new way of doing things. Like how can we bring the best technology we have now, like the best ideas, and pair that with the best of what's going on out there in the field, and make a new brand, like build something that's new out there that people really respond to. So that was kind of the genesis last year for Wavelength Coffee Roasters. That's how we started.
So you come from this designing career. Expand on the industrial design for me, just for listeners who don't understand, myself included in that. What did you do exactly?
Yeah, that's funny. I know when I was younger, and I would tell people I was an industrial designer, and they were like, "So you make factories, or you design factories and stuff?" And it's like, well, no, and it's a misleading name. And if you say product design now, everybody thinks you're designing like websites, and it's like, well, no. So really, what industrial design is it's like helping to develop the physical products that people make, like everything that's in front of you or around you that's a physical object that a company sells or makes. It's been designed by somebody, and designers like myself, we help to not just make it look good, which we do, but we would also figure out ways to how do people interact with it. How does it, it's called like ergonomics. So it's like making it fit the body, making it safe and comfortable to use, and all that kind of stuff. Like that was the side that designers would bring, and we worked hand in hand with engineers. Like at my company, we had a lot of engineers, of course, as well. And engineers are much more on the technical side of things and helping to figure out how to make things. And so when you get designers and engineers together, we would then work with clients from all over the world, with big and small. We had individual entrepreneurs, like folks who would come to us with just ideas that they were getting backing to help make into something real, all the way up to like huge multinationals or Fortune 500s that make big equipment or lots of consumer goods. So we worked on all kinds of things all over the world, and I loved that variety, like always doing something different. But it also means that, like, as a designer, I'm sort of a professional outsider, like never, I'm sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none, like got a chance to dabble in a lot of different things, but you never really get like super, super deep in anything. And instead of that being a negative, I actually think it's a superpower. It's like a real positive thing, because you come into every situation, every new client, every new project, or in this case, a new business, with just open eyes. You're just like, no preconceived notions. Like what can we do here? Like, what's new? What's called the white space, like the space around what everyone else has done. Like, where's the opportunity? And so you take that same mentality that I had used for 25 years working with other people's projects, and I kind of applied that to designing a business, to like building this thing around us, like from scratch, because I also appreciated that, like in working with clients, a business has inertia. Once it is kind of built in a certain way, it tends to kind of stay that direction. It's really hard. Like I was working with folks in sustainability. It was really hard to kind of shift people's companies in different directions if it wasn't built that way. So I wanted to make sure that when we designed Wavelength, we were starting from scratch with the right ingredients so that it could really be effective in how we wanted to do things.
You know, that's an interesting thing, man, because I know sometimes when you're coming up with the design at the beginning, maybe you have some parameters, but a lot of times there's just nothing to go on, right? You just almost like, there's just blank slate, and sometimes blank slate's great, but sometimes blank slate is just that. It's like, I don't even know where to start here. So what kind of a process did you have for that?
Yeah, it's usually crippling. Like if you have nothing to go on, which is why we always kind of start with, the design process would always kind of start with a brief, some kind of information that you'd be given, right? And sometimes it's more than, and sometimes it's less. It's like you're right. Sometimes you kind of have not a whole lot to go on, so you have to use your imagination and your creativity. You have to use think about what this thing is like. Look for precedents, things that are out there in the world. Just like you do with anything else, you look for some kind of a grounding, and then you find your own twist on it. That was honestly that was the part that I always loved the most about the design industry. I learned over the years what my strengths and what my weaknesses were. My strength was really I loved riffing on ideas. I loved coming up with new things and finding opportunities and sort of the concept, that early concept stage where everything is kind of new and exciting and you're seeing opportunities. Man, I loved that. That was so much fun. So I would lean into that and really work with our clients and work with my team or whatever to add where I could. And I kind of found that was kind of similar instincts. When we were looking at coffee as a totally different industry for me, I was like, well, where do you even start? What? I'm so new to this. I'm not a coffee professional for years and years and years. It's been a couple years now, but folks have been in this industry for decades, right? Who am I to come into this and tell them oh, this is what you want to do? It's well, but there's a power in being sort of the outsider, the objective person, right? Say well, okay, there's a lot of new things that are kind of cropping up, and there are some challenges with the way things are done now. What if we kind of built something that was different? And I almost I'm kind of maybe stupid enough to try those things because I wasn't trained to do them a different way. I think that my experience in just understanding how things kind of work and how they kind of connect has helped me to maybe avoid some of the bigger pitfalls, and to kind of build a space and build sort of a suite of technologies that we have here that really complement each other and work well.
So do you give me an example of something that you did work on that was clean slate, something that you got kind of an idea what the product was, but now you've got to make it ergonomic, or you've got to, some of those different things you've got to consider when designing it?
That would often happen most in maybe a lot of the startup companies we'd work with, right? If they were coming with a totally new technology, or they were really if they didn't have, a lot of the clients we might work with that are established companies, they've got years of product history. This is our product family of things we've done, and we're just making the next generation thing. So you've got a lot of history to work with. But with a new entrepreneur, you've got nothing to start with. You're how do you even do that? So what we'd start with then is instead of just diving right in maybe and thinking about what it could look like, is thinking about the context of that idea. Well, okay, who's using this thing, and what are they like? You think about the users, you kind of try to ground the whole thing in the process. You think about how this, whatever the product is, whether it's a medical device or whether it was some consumer product, or it almost doesn't matter in a lot of ways what industry it's in. You think about the context of its use, how does it really fit into the world around it, and then that gives you a lot to work with, because then you can start to see if you are inventing a new use scenario, then you can be maybe if this is a portable version of something that was never portable before, now it's how do you walk around with this thing, and how do you carry it, and how are you going to power it, and does it have batteries, and so you start asking questions about things like that then you start to understand I could make it look like this or like this, and so that you start to discover in a lot of ways the form that comes out of how you imagine it being used or interacted with. So that's kind of the process, at least that I would use internally when when I had like nothing else to go on.
Well, I can think of certain things. You mentioned portability, right? I can think of certain items I've used over the years where I'm carrying this thing around, and every time it swings and bumps against my leg, it tries to leave a mark, right? And I'm going, this could have been designed differently.
That could have been designed better. Yeah, there's definitely, the world is full of design mistakes. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fine. So tell me this, did you have any notable ones over the years where you made a design mistake?
Oh man. I did have a personal and this is more of like an existential sort of story. But one of the reasons why I think I started to be interested in doing something different after a long time was we did a lot of work for a company to be unnamed, but they made a lot of vacuum cleaners and like steam mops and like a lot of household like products, and super successful. We worked with them for a long time, and the work was great and everything. And as a designer, you always kind of there's a little bit of excitement you get when you see like something that you've worked on like on a shelf. You walk in like into Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever, and you're like, oh hey, I made that, and you think like, oh, it's really cool. And I was at an art museum for a friend of mine's birthday like celebration or whatever, and there was this installation by this artist where she had made these like large scale sculptures, and it was like this comment on overconsumption and just like all the trash that we make as humans, and they were kind of made to be grotesque looking, right? Like these sculptures. And smack right in the middle of one of them was this vacuum cleaner that I had designed like the year before.
Oh crap.
And I remember like walking to the museum, and at first like my first reaction was like, oh hey, I designed that. Like I was positive, but then I realized like, oh wait, like, oh, I designed that. Like
in the context, this isn't
in the context, it totally changed. It kind of flipped, even though I was aware of, obviously, you're not like unaware that things get thrown away, but it really kind of made it really visceral to me. And so that's where like, it wasn't like I designed something that was like a failure in the market necessarily, where I had problems, but like that was a product that resonated with me in that negative way. Like I realized like, okay, well maybe I'm just sort of helping to perpetuate a system where we're all just like buying a lot of stuff and throwing it away. And maybe there's a better way to do things. That was years before I eventually like sold the company and then thought about doing something different. So it planted a seed though, and it took several years to germinate. But it was there, and that was definitely a formative thing for me, for sure.
That's interesting because growing up, my father, he loved to buy just any kind of gadget he could get his hands on, right? But it was so often it was that cheap version of the thing, right? When
Yep.
and I would watch it, and I'd watch him replace it every few years, and I'm like, man, why don't you just buy the good one the first time? You quit, and that
Yep.
was my logic, right?
Yeah.
But his logic was, because I like to buy the next one. It looks different, and it's fresh. It's like a new thing to have,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't really deny that either. I'm like, well, I guess I could see that. You buy the cheap couch or the cheap chair, and it lasts you 3 years, and then it's falling apart. Well, then you get new furniture, and it's cheap. So I saw
Yeah.
both sides of that, man.
Hey, that's why like, leasing cars is like still super popular, because there's like, it's something nice about having the new version, right, when it comes out, because it is better, right? Like it's hard to argue against that. Like it's a better version of what you had, and there's a whole design industry and a manufacturing like consumer culture that's built around that, right? That it definitely pushes that idea. But there's, like you're saying, it's maybe not for everybody, but there's definitely a growing maybe presence and understanding that there are options out there now, like that you can you can do things differently.
Well, you listen to, if you're reading the old books and the value they placed on items like clothing, how much did an article of clothing cost? And it was significant. It wasn't, because that thing had to be weaved and it had to be sewn, and it was all by hand, and so it had a different representation of the labor it took to build something like that. And we don't even think about it, man. If we tear a hole in a t-shirt, we walk away like no big deal. It's
Totally.
not even a thought.
No, yeah, that is a absolute truth. Like, if you go back a couple generations, like if you like or grandparents or folks that lived through tough times or whatever, and you do get a totally different appreciation for the material stuff, because it still has value. You can make it last for quite a while. We do that. We've been experimenting with a new thing this summer with takeaway cups, like to-go cups, because we do some farmers markets and stuff, for our coffees where we serve like hot and ice cold, iced coffee and hot coffee, and we have the traditional to-go stuff like clear plastic things and whatever things for the paper things for hot coffee, but we're like, well, is there any what's out there for new options? How can we start to kind of address even that? Because that's a sticky problem of the single-use plastics and takeaway stuff. It's hard to avoid. If you go out to eat or go anywhere or do anything, for sanitary reasons, there's a lot of reasons why it's there, right? I'm not denying that there's a function, but it's a hard thing to solve. But we found this company that makes, they're called Gaia Star, and they've been making this. They invented this 3D printing technology. They make super, super thin clay cups. It's like a terracotta. It looks like a little terracotta pot, but it's really, really thin. It's pretty durable though, and it's made to use instead of a plastic cup. So but we talk about the view of material, right? I think it's fascinating that you've got this I have a plastic cup and I've got this clay cup. And they have the same function and the same size or whatever. And as far as the customer is concerned, it's basically the same. But when people see that clay cup, they react totally than they do to the plastic. The plastic, it's well, yeah, I just throw it away. You would never think about holding on to this plastic cup, even though you could hold on to it for 100 years. You could make that, you could give that to your grandchildren, right? And it would still be a great plastic cup, but we don't. We just throw it away. But the clay cup, then it's made of a material that people assume needs to be taken care of and needs to be kept, and people do. They bring it back, and we want people to bring it back. We actually give them refills and stuff. But I think it's just by changing the material, same shape, same vessel, same function, it completely changes your worldview of what do I do with this thing? And I think that's just fascinating. People are just amazing.
No, that is true, because you consider a paper cup versus say a stainless steel, right? It's the same way, man. The way you treat a stainless steel is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's that's interesting stuff. So listen, you come to the end of your design career and you decide you're going to pivot here, and pivoting is something I always like to talk about because that comes with a lot of considerations, right? It's not just, I'm just going to go start a coffee company. There's a lot more thought goes into it to make this transition. So one of those things happens to be this financial dip that happens at the beginning, right? You've got to be able to weather that storm. And so what did you guys do to prepare yourselves for that transition? Business owners, I want to talk to you for a second. Do you have a retail space inside your location? If so, I want you to think about something. Your customers are buying electrolytes. You know that, right? The problem is they're not buying them from you. Well, Salty Electrolytes can help fix that with their wholesale program. They can bring these sales to you in-house so that your customers get the electrolytes they love from the company they love, you. All you have to do is head over to goearnyoursalt.com and scroll to the bottom of the page and click Apply for Wholesale. Do it now before you forget. I know your type, I'm one of you. Once again, that's goearnyoursalt.com. The link is at the bottom of the homepage. There will also be a link in the description on this video. And now, my friends, go earn your salt.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that was something that, I was really glad that in my experience working in the consulting world, in design, right? Because I had a chance to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, I saw examples of when that worked, and also a lot of examples when it didn't, when it failed, when those people, they couldn't make it work. And not that I had it all figured out, but I definitely had at least that memory bank of okay, here's several examples. So that kind of gave me a better sense of what to expect when we started this. I didn't come into it thinking all right, day one, we're going to start making money. We're just going to make piles of cash, and I'm just going to set them aside and we're going to be good to go. I was look, it's going to be, and my wife had never started a company before, and I've had a chance to run and start a couple or whatever, and so this was a totally new experience for her. So I had to like mitigate expectations to be like, look, when we get started, like it's going to be a while. Like expect at least a year. Like the first year is just us like trying things. Like we're just going to experiment with the business and with our customers and like just see what happens. Don't have any expectation about like having being able to do this. So like we were fortunate enough to be able to have like saved up some money to start. Like so we kind of had that buffer, which you need to have that, right? You can't just you can't be expecting to make your bills like payments off the revenue of your business you just started that day. Like it's not going to happen. So we at least had a baseline of expectations, but it was also like we had done a lot of homework. It was like a year of background work before we ever opened our door. I think it was more than a year actually. It was like almost a year and a half of like just doing stuff like researching and talking to people in the industry. And like I was roasting at home. I bought a little roaster and I was roasting like nonstop in my basement for like a year and just trying things and experimenting with things and going and visiting the manufacturers of the coffee roasters to like talk to them and see it. So like it wasn't like just diving in from nothing. Like there was a lot of that behind the scenes stuff that we did before we ever opened our doors. So I think just learning as much as we could, especially since the risk was pretty high for us because we weren't in this industry. We didn't have connections we could pull from immediately. Like, if we had left one coffee company and decided to start our own, we could maybe leverage some of those connections, right, to start selling, right away. We knew that we were going to have to start just making new connections from day one. And like, we were like, okay, let's just prepare ourselves. Like, let's do our homework. But also another part of that is like, well, how do you make something that is going to stand out, right? How are you then on day one when you are trying to get those customers? How do you make sure that people are going to find you, that they're going to be interested? Like, give yourself a fighting chance. If you're going to basically be just like everybody else, then standing out is going to be really hard, and you're going to make that first year or two even tougher to basically. So like, we also made choices, not just in like, everything we're doing fits our whole ethos of like what we're trying to do. But we also are like, well, let's try to differentiate ourselves. Like, let's make some considered risks to try different packaging, to try different roasting, to like do these things differently and get out there so that we stand out and then give ourselves that extra fighting chance. So like, you kind of like admit that, all right, we're going to have some challenges, but like, let's give ourselves the best opportunities we can to make that work as fast as we can. So that was the best advice I could give myself, I guess.
Well, and that's wise, because you're talking about an industry where, freak man, coffee is about as competitive as it gets.
Yeah.
Right. There's a coffee shop on every corner. There's coffee roasters on every other corner. It is that way, right? It's super competitive, and so to differentiate, what did you guys do?
Well, we decided to pick like a three-pronged approach. We were like, we kind of saw like three main aspects of the business that we were going to tackle in a different way. And then the combination of those three things, as far as I can tell, like it either hasn't really been done or it hasn't been done very much. So one was like the sourcing side, like, where we get our beans from or where we get our coffee from, right? It seemed like in the work that I was doing in like researching what's been going on around the world, like with adaptation and everything, there was a lot of really amazing stuff going on that I just loved learning about. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And talking to some of those people, and it was really inspirational what a lot of the folks are doing, whether it's, agroforestry or it's like, helping, educate women and get women more into coffee ownership, or helping poor people like up, raise themselves up out of poverty. There was just a lot of like, beyond just great coffee, there was a lot of really great stories. And when you walk down the shelf, I felt like you might see fair trade or you might see organic, but you didn't see a lot of anything else as far as like learning what your coffee is all about. And I was like, I think there's a huge opportunity for folks like me who love coffee, but also like just love hearing about where it comes from and like how it's done. I think we could tell those stories better. And so we we invented kind of like these, we call them pillars, like these 5 different pillars that we group all of our coffee and sourcing in. And so like that was one aspect of like, let's tell the story about where the coffee's coming from really well. The other side of it was more on the roasting side, like the business, our own operations, and that was roasting. It's pretty evident, like 99+% of all coffee that's even made today, it's roasted with gas. Like it's basically natural gas, methane. It's usually done with what's called a drum roaster. So it is like a big horizontal rotating drum. It's a big steel drum on the inside of this machine, and that's heated really scorching hot with a bunch of open flames, gas burners underneath it. And that's pretty much 1850s technology. Like it's been like unchanged more or less for about 150 years. Literally, it's like the same stuff. And I was like, as a designer, like as a tech guy, I was like, man, there's got to be like new stuff coming out, right? There has to be a better way to do this, and there is. Like there's not a lot of them, but there are like a new emerging crop of these all electric roasters that are coming out. Some of them are kind of the same format, but there's also like people experimenting with different formats of roasters, and one of them is like these air roasters. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing. It's super efficient. It gets away from any of the gas, which is problematic for various reasons. It's not only just a greenhouse gas, but it also is really harmful to the people who work in roasteries, like the open flames. Like there's a reason why you're not supposed to use your gas grill like inside your house. The emissions are really bad for you. So same kind of deal. So it gets rid of all those issues, but it also makes like a really smooth, like clean, like the coffee you get from the air roaster we just loved the quality of it. We're like, this is just really amazing, superior coffee. It's awesome that you have this new technology then that also makes a superior version of it. So
how does the air roaster work? Describe that to me.
So the air roaster we're using, so it is, it's from a company called Air Motion Roasters. They actually are based in South Africa. They're a pretty new company, been around maybe, I guess, like 5 years or so. But it works like a giant popcorn popper. Like it literally is like, it's this roasting chamber is this vertical column of hot air, and it's an open chamber. So like normally when it's roasting, it's sitting underneath like kind of a big duct that sucks up all of the stuff that comes off the roasting, moisture and chaff and dust and all that kind of stuff. But it is like an open chamber. So I can actually, at the end of a roast day, I pull it out and I can clean out the inside. It's a stainless steel, cooking area. And so it's more akin to like doing home or brewing a beer or like the stainless steel vessels when we're doing that kind of thing. Like it's super sanitary, super clean. You don't get any buildup of stuff. But it is like literally, it's just hot air that's actually agitating and roasting the beans. So
is it set up like in levels, like a dehydrator maybe?
It actually is like it is like literally like a popcorn popper. Like because you can roast coffee in a popcorn popper and it actually comes out great. It's like just the hot air forces all the beans to kind of jump and dance around,
okay.
It's like
so it's blowing around in there.
It's all blowing around in there. It almost looks like a tornado. Like all of the beans are jumping around inside, and it's being roasted with it's more convection. So like it's the hot air from all sides of each coffee bean are like roasting. So it's super even, as opposed to like a drum roaster does some of that, but it's a lot of conduction cooking as well. Like it's like sitting on a frying pan almost. Like
it's a hot surface, sure.
When it's touching that hot surface is also when it's doing a lot of cooking, and you don't really have that as much in an air roaster. So it's the product you get is because of that is very even. It's and because you're not like with a drum roaster, also you never can really get inside and clean it. It's really, most of them it's impossible to get in the inside. So over the years that you use it, like it does kind of build up a surface of stuff. And so actually over decades, you can be tasting more of like what the machine tastes like and less about like what the bean is. And so one of the advantages we found with this air roasting is like it really lets the origin, like the taste of like where you're getting this coffee from, it really lets that shine through in a really clear way. But so that was the second, like the roasting was kind of all this new roasting technology was one big thing we were going at. And then there was the packaging was the third item that we wanted to do differently. I had always found that like the ubiquitous coffee bags, like you buy coffee out there, like almost all of it's in bags, right? But the doing something with the bags, like the materials that they're made of, even if they say there are a lot of the eco like options say that they're biodegradable or compostable or even recyclable, the plastic ones. And the truth is that unfortunately, almost all of it ends up in the landfill, or it gets burned, or it gets like shipped to another country and then burned. So it's really not really being turned into anything good. And so we looked at steel, because steel cans, you can still get Folgers and chock full of nuts or whatever. Like the old way that my grandparents bought coffee. Turns out in a lot of ways it's kind of better. You talk about how maybe older generations would revere certain materials a lot more, be careful with things. Well, as it turns out, steel it's a great barrier for keeping moisture and light out. So it keeps the beans fresher for longer when they're inside. And it's also 100% recyclable and totally circular, which means that once it's recycled, you can use steel again to make anything. You could make body implants with it. You can make an airplane. You can make more cans. Steel is like the most amazing circular material that humans have ever made. And something like over 97% of all the steel ever made by people is still in circulation, because it's so easy to actually keep out. It's magnetic. You can keep it out of the trash. So it's as a material, it made a lot of sense. And we buy the cans from a company here in the U.S. that makes their steel from U.S. recycled steel. So it's like we keep that loop as short as we can, and we try to keep all the business. We do everything where it makes sense, right, to keep everything as local as we possibly can.
When you're talking about choosing, one of the things I saw on your website, you were talking about the bags that the coffee comes to you in.
Yeah.
There's something like 100 pounds or 130 pounds. Can't remember what it said on there, but you said it looks like a burlap bag, but it's inside. It's still plastic, and you mentioned. It sounds like just the tone that was written in was like, well, crap, man. It'd be great if it wasn't, but that's the facts of it, right?
That's just the facts of it. I mean, like, plastic is a great material. It's a miracle material, and it's amazing for doing certain things. And you can't really get away from it in a lot of cases. And that's where, when they're shipping the unroasted coffee from wherever it comes from, whether it's Brazil or Costa Rica or Tanzania or wherever in the world, the outside is that burlap sack, but on the inside, most of the time, it's a plastic bag. And that plastic bag, though, keeps bugs out. You don't want things getting in there, or rats or whatever. So it's a hermetic seal to keep pests out, but it also keeps moisture out, and it also keeps moisture in, because it's super critical that the coffee, before it's roasted, stays within a certain moisture content range. Mm-hmm. If it gets too dry or too wet, both of those are not good. It wants to stay. If it stays in a happy zone, then it basically stays shelf stable for a real long time, for over a year, well over a year. And so, it's that was one of the things maybe you don't realize outside of the industry. It's well, okay, it looks like that quaint printed bag, and the burlap sacks look super cool, but on the inside it's a plastic bag.
So why do they even bother with the burlap? Is it just for
That's a good question. I think it's branding for a lot of point. I think it's also kind of easier to hold on to. The plastic bags are kind of slippery, and I think you see at the warehouses and folks, when they're moving things around, a lot of it is manual. They're all when they're loading up sacks and everything. So the burlap is definitely easier to hold on to, for sure. But I think in some cases it is sort of just well, that's the way they've always done it, so they just keep doing it. So.
Even though they've added the plastic bags.
Even though they've added the plastic
but
bags.
Let's keep it burlap. It just looks right.
Yeah, it just looks cool. Yeah.
I love it, man. Okay, so as you're making this transition, man, from career to coffee, we mentioned the financial preparations and that, but relationally with your spouse, so you and your wife are both involved in this thing.
Yeah.
How did those conversations go? And it's hey, you want to quit our jobs and go do this new venture? What did that look like?
Yeah, I know. Some people thought I was crazy, really? You're going to business with your wife? And it's well, yeah. Now I must admit, I think, you've got to have a good relationship, or else when you're working together, you will expose that pretty quickly. If there are some issues there, those will come out real fast. And I think, every good relationship, every couple out there, like, your hot buttons, the things that bother each other. And I think like you just learn as we go into this, like we're like, look, we had never worked together before. She had never really seen me in sort of a professional environment, but I'd been, doing this for like 25 years or whatever. And I had told her like, look, I'm going to be business Jim, like when I'm at work. But if I'm like too much, or if I'm saying stuff I shouldn't be, you just, let me know, basically. We got to be honest with each other, but also when we're in business mode, you kind of have to wear a different hat in a lot of ways. Like you have to make sure, I guess, that you would talk to your spouse just like you would more or less like another coworker, right? Like, because you talk to your coworkers, like when you're in the heat of business, like you're just very direct, you're very quick. You're like, okay, if you've got something to do, like you just got to get it done sometimes. And with your spouse or whatever, like sometimes like, look, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like, look, we got to get this done, or you didn't do that right, or like, oops, I made a mistake. Like I think we've learned over the last several months, like where those boundaries lie. It's honestly mostly on me. She is a sweetheart and she is the nicest person. It's more about me when I'm like being like too regimented or too strict or whatever. She's like, look, take it easy. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to learn that. But I think it's also defining your roles. I think so. There's the part I was just talking about, which is more about just like learning how to work together. But there's also like, it's really important for each person to have things that are sort of their own, right? Like this is my purview, this is yours. Not that we don't ever share, but like I'm in charge of this and you're in charge of that. And then there are things that we collaborate on that are sort of in the middle, and super important to have those like pretty well defined so that you're not like stepping on toes or taking like, too much ownership, because we're 50-50 partners in this business. And if one of us isn't feeling like they're getting 50% of the responsibility or the say, that's a problem. You've got to make sure that it's equal. And so with me, like I do a lot of this stuff, which she's totally fine with. She's not really, crazy about the interview stuff. And I do a lot of the writing and, the marketing stuff. But she honestly takes care of a lot of the social media. She does all of the business management side of things. So like all the money management, all the client relations, customer relations, which I'm super thankful for, because like I said, she's so much better at that stuff than I am. And like, so we sort of naturally knew where we were going to go. And it's been awesome actually to see that, and even just in the 8 months, like that she's been really, I think, just excelling in like running a business in a way that she's never had that opportunity before. And she was like really, I think, really nervous about it. But like, I think it just comes naturally. She's like, and she holds me to task, like, and that's what I wanted. I want to make, if I'm in charge, I'll just start like spending money on things and buying stuff. And she's like, whoa, no, hey, wait, that's not in the budget.
Slow down.
Let's go back. Slow down, mister. Like, so you got to have that partnership. You got to have that balance. But I think, again, like it's really important for everybody to have roles that they can really lean into and own. And so far, knock on wood, like so far it's been working out really good.
Yeah, that's a challenging thing, right? I was just in an episode that previous to yours that I was recording, was talking to the gentleman about that. And they own a family business, and it was that conversation about how do you separate those roles, right? Because you don't want, I feel like if two people are in charge of the same thing, they're both just going to blame the other one when it goes wrong. So there really has to be that accountability, that one person in charge of that one thing. And do you guys have those roles written out at all inside the company?
Maybe not written out per se. Although actually, I think in some level we actually do, because like there's sometimes like when you're creating sort of business charters and things like that, you do you assign roles to each person. Honestly, like in our household, Deanna she also controls the purse strings. So it was like a natural fit, like, okay, going from the home environment where you're in charge of the money, like that's what you're going to be doing in the business too. Like, and so it was something she also felt comfortable in sort of naturally going into. So she was always kind of thought of being like, well, you're going to be the business manager. And because my my knowledge and background in sort of the more the technical side of things and the design and engineering stuff, like I just naturally gravitated to more of the process side of stuff. So like all the roasting, the ordering and the designing of the space, like ordering of the coffee, so sourcing the coffee, making sure all the inventory management stuff's there. I got all spreadsheets of everything all right. So like that stuff I love and like I totally gravitate towards. So like we didn't even have to debate about like who took those roles. It's more about the stuff that's in between that's been sometimes is more of a challenge, like the media stuff, and the outreach, or like, well, how do we talk about our company, and when we go to like presentations or things, like who says what and what do we, how do we actually share that, or we've learned a lot about that stuff, and what works and what doesn't, and certain environments of when it makes more sense. So yeah, again, I think you're totally right. She doesn't try to tell me how to do the roasting. At the same time, we share. Like I'll bring like, hey, I'm struggling with this like coffee. Like which one do you like better? Let's do a cupping. Let's try this or that. So there's a lot of collaboration. In the same way on the business side of things, there's nothing that either one of us is doing that we don't share with each other or bounce back and forth. But yeah, in the end, like we know who's ultimately responsible for each side, and that's super key.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have those lines, drawn out, because I do see that happen where I can think of a company I owned 20 years ago, and it was that way. It was like we down to the vehicles, right? We had drivers of trucks, and if we let them share the truck, every new dent that showed up was blamed on the next guy. Well, it was him. He must have did it. It wasn't me, and then I had no way to know either. So,
my god, yeah,
that's funny. Talk about this, man. So you started last October is when you guys officially launched.
Yep.
And we blew through it a little bit, but the competitiveness of the coffee world is, I honestly, I almost can't think of something that would be more highly competitive than that, right? You went into probably, it's got to be top 5 of the most competitive industries on the planet. And now you're out there marketing, okay? So what have you guys found? First of all, what things have you done to really promote your company?
So, yeah, you make a really good point. When you say it that way, I'm like, yeah, why did I start this company in coffee? That's a really good point.
No, hey, man, I went into electrolytes. Are you kidding? Like, supplement industry. I picked number.
Yeah, like that's not competitive at all, right?
Yeah, no. We designed salty electrolytes with a very important concept in mind, something we call counterparts. Minerals have very specific functions in your body, but those functions are one-sided. For example, sodium allows water into your cells, where it stays until potassium comes along and lets it out. You know this as the sodium-potassium pump. Calcium and magnesium work in a similar way, so we put both in our drink. In our research, we came across data that showed us that nearly 98% of athletes are deficient on iodine. This fact prompted us to use iodine in our formula, but it turns out you cannot absorb iodine properly without zinc present. So what did we do? You guessed it, we added zinc. Every ingredient in our formula is paired with its counterpart. Authentic Salty Electrolytes is the only electrolyte drink that prioritizes counterparts. Get some for yourself today at saltyelectrolytes.com and feel what proper counterparts can do for you. Go earn your salt.
Coffee is, so yeah, just to highlight your point, coffee is the most consumed beverage on earth after water. So it's like, yeah, it is everywhere. And yeah, it is kind of crazy. But so we leaned in, we knew from the start, like we didn't want to do necessarily a cafe like to start with. I had worked in a cafe before. I had done some food service work in the past, and I knew I loved it, but I also appreciated how hard it was. And we're like, look, as our first like venture together, I don't know if I want to dive like right into the deep end. Like that's super hard. Coffee roasting seemed like a better way for us to get in and make an impact and own more of the process. but there's a downside to that. Like cafes give you an automatic way to get your product out to people, right? Like it's a pretty easy way to like, hey, we open up a cafe, people need coffee, they come in the door, at least you've got a revenue stream. With roasting, now you have to sell people online, or you've got to find stores that will resell your product. So there's like the reselling thing, and then you've got to find wholesalers or folks that will buy your beans and actually roast them for their customers, whether it's cafes or restaurants, that sort of thing. And so it's understanding like, well, okay, what are those channels now? What are those retail channels that we have open to us? And how do we start getting out there? So like we've done a few things, like even though we're not a cafe, being a part of our community and being active in our local community was really important to us from the start. So the space that we have here, we've got about 5,000 square feet. It's pretty big. It's an old mill complex here in the Massachusetts area, and we loved the space because it gives us room to grow, but it also gives us room to host like events and groups. So we have, like, from the start, we've had people come reach out to us who were like, hey, can we come and visit you? Can we bring we worked with some colleges and universities and things like, hey, can we bring the students out and do like a tour and see your place? And then we do like a custom tasting, and then we would start to do custom blends for the school because the kids wanted to sell it at their cafe that they were operating out of. So like it kind of naturally started. We didn't plan on it necessarily, but it was a thing that naturally happened with the space we had here. We're like, okay, this is an opportunity for us to start to get out there. And so we're leaning more into that and actually promoting that side of the business of like doing events, hosting businesses. And that's something that a lot of other roasters can't do because you may not have the space for it. But we're also as involved as we can online, like with socials, especially mostly with Instagram and some Facebook stuff. But we're staying active in that to basically try to promote more like our the retail channel through our website. We have all of our products that we sell online, and we'll ship anywhere in the U.S. So that there's that part of the business too. I'm just trying to keep that word out. But the local scene, I think, whether it's the hosting events, but also all of the there's farmers markets, there's all kinds of other sort of festivals and things around, that we're doing as much of that as we can, because getting out in front of people is like our best sales tool. Like we've done and we've even paid for some stuff doing like marketing and things like that on Instagram and Facebook. And it turns maybe a little bit of heads, but I think it's more about just keeping keeping sort of like an image up of like, hey, this is kind of what's going on. It's more entertainment almost, or like I don't want to make it sound bad, but like a fan club, if you will, like people who follow see that we're doing what we're doing. But it's not really like a revenue generator necessarily. It's more about like, hey, here's what's going on. What's actually getting like people in the door and business to happen is the personal outreach, is actually getting in front of real people in our community at events, at shows, at different festivals, reaching out to businesses and actually coming to them and saying, hey, would you like to carry our coffee? We'll give you some samples. Is there anything we can do to help you out? That has actually turned into how we generate more business. So again, it's been a learning process, but I think that's one of my big takeaways, was like how I appreciated how important it was to show up for your local community and just to get out in front of people. There's going to be a limit to that. Obviously, there's only two of us, and there's only so many shows you can do, right? But I think like that helps to build that ground base, that certain customer base that you can then leverage that to grow beyond. So it's only been 8 months in, and we're starting to see some traction with some of that. We're starting to see some folks, some restaurants and things like in the Boston area who are starting to pick up our coffees. So we're absolutely thankful for that and really excited about where that can go. But yeah, it wouldn't happen without us really just approaching people and getting out in front of them. So can't say enough about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I think a lot of times, especially in the beginning of business ventures, when someone's new to marketing, they almost want to avoid those things because it's difficult. You got to put yourself out there. You got to deal with the rejection. You've got to, there's all these things that happen that are emotional, man. And I am curious how you guys, because you both came from jobs, right? It's not quite the same when you're working for someone else versus when this is now your baby and you have to put yourself out there for real. And man, some people once in a while, they want to, I don't know what they're thinking, but they'll tell you straight if they don't like something you've done.
There is, yeah, there are like the certain people that are just like, hey, I don't like that. And you're like, okay, I appreciate that. There's some different things for everybody, but it's funny. Like my wife is, I'm the emotional one. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and so for me, I'm the one that like will take the rejection like the hardest. Like, oh, that'll be hard. But she comes from education. It's like her.
God, yeah.
She was in most recently, and that like, that'll beat you up. Not that she's like steel, but like she's more unafraid to just like walk up to somebody and just start talking about what we're up to and just telling them like just more of the cold, like talk to somebody. And for me, that gives me like, in this kind of environment, when we're like sitting down and talking about something, like I'll talk forever and I'm super comfortable. But when it comes to like, if you put me in a cocktail party and I got to like make small talk with people that I've never met before, like that's hard for me. Like, but she'll just goes right out there and just starts talking to people. And, that's awesome because we've had more, that ice breaking ability. And that like not fear of rejection, right? Like, cause I'll avoid some of those like interactions, be like, oh, I don't know. Like, what if it doesn't work out? And she'd be like, well, but what if it does? Like you got to put yourself out there. And I think maybe that comes from her background or just her personality, but that has been absolutely crucial for us to make some of these connections. Cause some of those times when I've avoided it and it's turned into something for real, like that she has kind of pursued, and I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for her. So you kind of have to get out there and be unafraid and be willing to take that risk. And that's where like, if it was just me on my own, I probably wouldn't have done it. But having that partner, and whether it's a business partner or your life partner that happens to be a business partner too, like, but having that like somebody else there with you to help you kind of bolster you up or get you through those moments, it's important. It really is.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, man, because you've probably heard it before, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yep.
So it's very logical to get yourself in front of more people, but you're right. It's hard. Sometimes it's like, man, I don't feel like that today.
You just don't. Yeah, you just don't feel. I don't know if I could deal with another rejection, or what if they don't want to talk to me? And I don't know. It doesn't make any sense from a business standpoint, but it is like it's in your head, right? Yeah, it's silly.
Every startup deals with it. And I think it's an underrated. What you call it? It's underrated on how much it affects you, right? And it's one of those obstacles. Like creating a product was easy, right? It was work, but you were never nervous about it. You just did it, and you just kept doing repetitions of it until you got it down to where you liked it. It's very mechanical,
Yes.
right? But it's not that person-to-person rejection, and that can be difficult, man.
In my previous life, like when I was running the design company, my business partner at the time and I, we tried a couple spin-offs. Like we tried to do like a little side project, and one of them was a golf putter, because I'm an avid golfer, and so we came up with this idea for a new kind of golf putter, and like you're right, like the coming up with the idea and the making of it, like all that was in my wheelhouse. Like that was easy. Like. But it was almost like it's super naive now that I look back on it. That was a good experience that the project failed, right, in a way, because we basically started a company, we got a patent, we tried to get it out in the world, and I realized that you can make the best product you want if you don't know how to sell it, or if you don't have the stomach for getting it out there or the time to invest in getting it out there, it's going to go nowhere. Like that is a full-time job, and plus some, to just do the marketing, to just get it out in the world. And I realized that like I just didn't have the time, the stomach, all the other. I didn't have it. That wasn't who I couldn't do it. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened, was that didn't work out, because now when I came into this, I realized like all the mistakes I had made, and I was gonna try to avoid those as best I could. And one of those was like, you have to be fully committed to what you're doing. Like the side hustle thing, at least in that sense for me, like I couldn't make it work because my full-time gig just required so much of my effort. You can't sort of on the side start to try to, launch your own company and somehow make both of them work. one of them's going to suffer, right? And with this, and with Wavelength, like I knew like this was going to be what we do, so we're going to go all in. And this is what I'm devoting my life to now because we're going to make it work.
Yeah, that I love that you brought up the side hustle, man, because I think people think they're gonna, on 2 or 3 hours a week they're gonna build a new thing, and I'm like, you're just not. I'm sorry, it takes way more than that. You vastly underestimate what it takes, the amount of energy burn it takes to launch something.
Absolutely.
It's very akin to rocket science, right? Most of the fuel is burned in the first 10 seconds. It's just getting it off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, and I think back to my experience with like that, that putter company was like, spending a year or more and the R&D stuff was easy, like, because that was easy for me and I could do it on the weekends and I could just do it in my own head. It was kind of what you're talking about. Like, it doesn't require you to sell, like the sales side of things. But I really had as a designer, I had way underappreciated the importance of good sales and salesmanship and just marketing and just understanding that is a whole world that I had neglected and didn't really put any, not that I didn't put any emphasis on it, but I was like, well, it'll take care of itself. Like this whole idea of like, oh, you build a better mousetrap, right? And the world will beat a path to your door. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe, we see a couple examples where that does work, like a viral thing that goes crazy, but like those are like 1 in a million or billion of the entrepreneurs that succeed in that way. All the other folks that are starting their own businesses have to work at it for years to build it up and make it something that's stable and organically grown, right? Like that's hard. That's the real hard work.
Yeah, I after starting this venture, when you hear that term, it's just going to sell itself. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, nothing sells itself. I don't think,
Yeah.
People can sell, like if you've got, there are certain personalities that can just kind of, are serial entrepreneurs that whatever they do, like just, happens because they're so good at it. But I think like you've really got to make a case for your product in whatever it is. And you've got to be able to understand what people are looking for, what's important to them, and be able to appeal to that. And if you can, hit them, if you can sort of appeal to people's sensibilities, but also just their visceral like needs, like with coffee, right? For instance, right? It was, even though we are really focused on sustainability and trying to, really highlight the stories and all that stuff, and it's super important to me, I also knew that most people aren't going to change what they do or buy my product just because they care about the environment, right? Or care about sustainability. That's not good enough. You've got to put out there something that is just a really excellent quality. Like it's got to be better, and people will buy something or will go towards something if it offers a better experience. Then that's how you change people's minds. You can't lecture at them all day and be like, well, I'm going to give you a TED talk and afterwards you're going to buy my coffee. And it's like, maybe a couple people will, but like that's not how you're going to make you be successful. You've got to make something that tastes good, and it's got to then like the experience of interacting with the company, the customer experience, the experience of getting to know us, and coming to our tastings, or we invite people to come in and our customers and try new products, or even just having them come back in and refill the can that they and give them a discount. Be like, look, I appreciate you held on to this can. You bring it back, we'll give you $2 back on whatever coffee you buy. And then they're part of the whole thing. Then it's you're offering them an experience to be involved, right? And to be part of something. And that's what I always loved about the companies that I admired. Like the companies that I always wanted to be a part of were those ones that you felt like you were part of something, instead of just a transactional thing. We wanted to replicate that in what we do here. You appeal to people's senses or sensibilities, right? With with our purpose, because that obviously is part of it. But so they might be interested in that, but they get hooked with like, yeah, but your coffee tastes good, right? Like this is stuff. That's how you can really kind of build something, and it takes time.
Do you? This is more for my personal curiosity. There was it does kind of coincide with what you're saying. It really belongs in the conversation here. But there was a coffee shop down the street from me, and they roasted in the coffee shop. So they were they were the roaster and the reseller, right? Or retailer. But man, their coffee was terrible. And I would tell the guy, because we got to be kind of friends, but I would still go there and I would still order the coffee, and I just didn't like it. And I was so, I loved the environment though. The store was great. The as a meeting place for business meetings and such, it was a wonderful place. So I tolerated the coffee because of the environment. And you sort of mentioned that.
Yep.
But my contention was this: he really insisted that light roast coffee was the wave of the future, and dark roast had no place in this universe. And man, I'm a dark roast guy to the bone. So talk about that for me.
That is hilarious. So what you're speaking to is a really important part of what we have in some ways kind of stumbled into, or not exactly, because I think when we started this company, like one of the things we wanted to be was like approachable, and because we understood that a lot of what we wanted to do was pretty heavy, like in terms of telling the stories of people all over the world. It's a lot of information, and we didn't want to be just like hitting people over the head with things, but we wanted to stay friendly and approachable. What we've learned too is like coffee culture, like you're talking about, like at a cafe or anywhere, like especially in the big cities, right? The coffee culture is super intimidating, and this is coming from somebody who loves coffee. And when I go to a city, I'll search out what the best cafes are, and I'll go there, so I'm like part of the problem, right? And I used to work in a cafe, so I was like part of that whole thing. But it is what I appreciate after now, like actually speaking with a lot of our customers and meeting people, is it strikes me how much people are just like turned off by the sort of obnoxiousness of the cafe culture, like you were saying, of like somebody telling them like, this is what you should be drinking, this is how you should be drinking, don't put any milk or sugar in this coffee, like I made this for you, you should be drinking it black because that's how you should appreciate it. And it's like, hey man, like I just want to put milk and sugar in my coffee, like why are you giving me I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts or I'll go to Starbucks, like where they won't give me a hard time about it. And I feel like the cafe culture is really missing out on an opportunity to bring more people into the fold of like higher quality coffee by being that way. And so so whenever we do events in front of people, one of the things we did from the start, and now we do all the time, was we have these like press pots, these air pots, you like kind of put coffee in it and you press the little thing on the top. We put one of those out for all of our coffee. So we usually have— Is
that like a French press? Oh, no, you're talking about just the pump.
A little pump. Yeah. So it's like the insulated things, the thermos things, but it has a little pump on the top. But we set those out, and we have one for every coffee that we're selling. Because at first we were like, well, how are people going to know what our coffee tastes like if they can't taste it? And we're not a cafe, so like that was just at first like a way for us to just sell stuff. But also now it's turned out to like people really love that, because if you go to pretty much any other place, there is no opportunity for people just to try something and just to have the experience of like trying something new. And so we've always had like a range. We lay everything out like, okay, it starts on light on this end and it's darker on this end, and in between is like all kinds of stuff. And then we'll walk people through, and first thing we always ask people is like, well, what do you usually like? Like, do you like super dark stuff? Do you like the fruity, more experimental stuff? Do you like, hey man, I like, we hear a lot up here is like, I just like Dunkin' Donuts. I have no idea where I should start. And we were like, okay, I have the perfect coffee for you to start at. Like, we've got this amazing Costa Rican. It's an incredible coffee. It's like right in the middle. It's a crowd pleaser. Like, I've never met anyone who doesn't like this coffee. Like, if you don't like this coffee, you just don't like coffee, right? And like people will start there and be like, yeah, it's amazing. And then they'll try things next to it, right? They'll surprise themselves by trying new things. And I feel like that just comfort and acceptance and exploration, or like let people put milk and sugar in their stuff. Like you'll get more people on your side to actually be willing to spend the extra money on product that is made correctly, that's made well, that actually gives it a correct amount or a good amount to the farmers, right? That's not exploitative. you're never going to get that to that level if you're really just turning your customers away because, you're disdainful of their
Being a
choice.
snob.
Yeah, it doesn't help anybody really. So yeah, I hear you. I hear your pain, and we try to be as open and expressive to people as we can to get people on board.
It's so funny, man. To me, it's kind of comical because I take it way more serious than I should because I'm like, man, I want dark roast. Freaking give me dark roast.
Yeah.
I asked you for it. No, it's just cook it longer. I don't know how it works, but is that how it works?
Basically, yeah. So
Yeah.
like technically, so we just want, just to spend a minute on that. Like, so coffee, when you're roasting it, all coffee kind of goes through a first few minutes of all the same process where it turns from sort of sometimes greenish or blue, like when it's raw, it turns yellow and then it gets kind of tan and turns like a light brown. And then and this is all happening within a matter of a couple minutes. Cause like even on like I've got a 6 kilogram, it's like 13-pound full capacity roaster here that I use. And a full roast will take anywhere from maybe 10 to 12 minutes, something like that, for all that coffee. And so the first few minutes, it's getting up to temperature, and then at a certain point, or at around say 400 degrees Fahrenheit, a little bit more than that, it goes through what's called first crack, which is like when you're popping popcorn, it kind of sounds like it makes like a cracking noise, and that's like the gas on the inside of the bean, like the water vapor, is expanding super fast. Like it starts to boil and like it doesn't have anywhere to go, so that they start to crack. And anytime after that crack, coffee is technically roasted and can be consumed. Up until that point, you wouldn't want to drink it. It's kind of raw tasting. But folks that do like the super light roasts, like they'll get it to first crack, and then they stop. And so it's super light, and it often has like, that's a way for you to get like some more of the delicate flavors in some of the coffees to kind of come through. Personally, I'm much more of a medium roast guy. Like I like it to be kind of in the middle. I'm not super dark and I'm not super light, but I like things to be sort of, because I feel like, for me at least, the middle ground for most coffees is where the best flavor comes out. And it's a good balance of some more of those delicate flavors with more of the, more caramel, chocolatey kind of things you get from the darker roasts. And that said, like there are each coffee from each place, it tells me how it wants to be roasted. I try it at several levels, and really what tastes best is how we leave it. And so we have some that we roast dark and some that we roast really light because that's how it tasted best. I don't come into it being like, okay, I'm going to make a dark roast with this coffee. This is just what the coffee wants. And so basically, on a fundamental level, like however long you roast after that first crack is how dark the roast is, basically. And you can go, my darkest one I roast for about 2.5 minutes after first crack. So it's a pretty long way, and it gets pretty dark. But folks love that. Like people who like dark roast, they're like, oh yeah, like that's what I'm looking for. That's good.
That sounds good. I love it, man. Have you guys
exactly?
Have you gotten to that place where you've hired an employee yet?
Not yet. That's a whole thing, when it's just my wife and I, and we're just the co-owners, like there's a certain comfort in ease in when you're doing your whole thing. But now, and I've had employees, I've had employees before in like my other businesses and stuff, and I appreciate, I'm excited to get to the point where we grow enough where we can actually bring somebody on board. Like that means good things. Like that means we're growing. That means we need to bring work on, and we can support also other people too, which is awesome. But there's also like that, there's a lot of work there too, right? You've got training. Now you've got, certain liabilities. Yep. You've got, extra expenses. And so it's not an easy barrier to make, to kind of get to that point. I would love it for us to get to that point, for sure. And I can easily see a path where we get to that point where, look, I just can't roast every day, all day, and also do all the other stuff that I'm doing. Like having somebody to help on that side of things, like probably hiring roasters or whatever, is going to be probably our first step as we go through. But yeah, maybe sometime in the next year we'll make that leap.
Are you taking time to document all your processes as you're going through this stage?
Yeah.
All right, you sweaty buggers. That liquid dripping off your forehead and down your back, contains minerals that are critical for high performance. If you don't put those minerals back, you're not going to perform well. This is where Salty Electrolytes comes in. Salt contains 6 electrolyte minerals plus a touch of iodine to help you replenish after a hard workout. Salt is the only electrolyte supplement to pair every mineral with its counterpart, giving you the most robust mineral profile on the market, period. Head over to goearnyoursalt.com today to get some for yourself. Use the code GOEARNYOURSALT to get 15% off your first order. And now, my friends, go earn your salt.
Yeah, for sure. And that was something, you talk about diving into a new business, something that we were really unprepared for when we started was just the rigor of basically starting a restaurant. Because at least in Massachusetts, and I think it's true in most states, like as a coffee roaster, even not as a cafe, like as a roaster, we have to effectively be licensed just like any other food establishment is. So like you've got to adhere to your state's restaurant like safety codes and health codes and all that stuff. So you've got and if we sell over state lines like we do, like now the state's got to get involved, and we've got different licensing and different. So like we kind of came into it totally blind, and we were like, wow, there's a whole world of regulatory compliance that we were unaware of, and so that has been a huge learning experience. And a big part of that is documenting your processes, right? You have to tell them what you're going to do, and you got to do it, and then you've got to check that you did it, basically, And as long as everything's written down, it doesn't have to be super fancy, but you've just got to basically say what you're going to do what you did, and then say that you did what you did. And it sounds like, at first, it always sounds like, oh man, that's just a lot of extra work, but it is. I kind of love it. I kind of love going through the process, and every time I roast, I have a whole process I go through of documenting, temperatures, end temperatures, beginning and ending weights, and all of that's written down in duplicate. And I've got, all of this kept in spreadsheets and also physical things. And so like we have all of these processes laid out that I find now it's like the astronauts and the checklists, right? Like everybody needs checklists to keep you on track, and it actually helps to kind of reduce that mental burden, because it can be really overwhelming. Like when you're just busy and going through everything, like you don't want to miss steps. Having like the checklist that's just there, you just go through it. It's like it's an offload, and it does make it easier, and it makes it also so that, especially when you're making something like coffee, like there's a process that we can replicate every single time. So I have the same output every single roast I do. I know what it's going to be like. So when someone buys it, says, hey, I want this now, or roast this for me next week, it's going to be the same as it was last week. That's really important to maintain quality and maintain consistency. And it's really hard to do if you're not keeping track of all your processes. So yeah, it's a huge part of the business.
It is amazing how many businesses don't do that. And generally in manufacturing, which is probably kind of what you're considered, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
They will do that more often, because you kind of have to if you're going to be consistent. But man, you get outside of a manufacturing situation, and man, it's like, I talk to small business owners and they're completely clueless on how they're getting the result they're getting. And I always say, dude, you need to know how it works, so if it breaks, you can fix it, because it's.
Or if you're going to bring on, like, if anyone else is going to do this work besides you, like if you ever want to sell your business or bring in, like, get help, if it's all in your head, man, like you can't ever get it out, and you can't ever take a break. You can't ever go on vacation. That's the tough thing. Like you can't own the entire process. You've got to make the process separate from you. You can still be like absolutely pivotal to how the company works, but you can't have the process inside your head. That's just not a company. It just doesn't work.
I used to, when I have another company besides my electrolyte company, and when I was writing the processes for that, I wrote it so that my 10-year-old could do it. And I would literally take the sheets of paper that had all the steps on it, hand it to her, and see if she could replicate it, man. And if the results came out, then it was good. If it wasn't, I had some adjusting to do. So
that is super smart. That is super smart, because like I tell you, like from my background, like in design and everything, like it was always amazing to me how like you can assume that you know how people are going to do things, and you can get so close to a process or to anything else, and you're like, yeah, obviously, like in product design, like we would develop something like maybe it's a keypad or it's a certain way of opening a latch or anything like that where it involves like a couple steps, and it seems so obvious, and then you put it in front of people and like do testing groups and stuff. Guaranteed in the first like 5 minutes someone's going to do it wrong, or someone's going to be like, how do you do this, or like break it, or and so it's a really humbling experience to realize like in your head you've already skipped over like 10 steps when you think
Right.
of like, oh, you just open the latch. People are like, what? Well, how do you do that? Like you can't assume, and you've got to actually go through the steps and actually doing what you did. Super smart way to do things.
Well, we got a kick out of it. So we have these little packets, right, of our electrolyte supplement, and we would watch. So we'd mail samples out to people, and then they would put little videos up because they had some type of influencer, right? And so they'd put these little videos up of them trying to open this packet, and I just thought it was obvious, just grab it and tear it, right?
Yeah.
But it is not, man. They'll grab it and rip it lengthwise. They'll bite it off with their teeth, and then they're cutting their lip with the corner of the foil, and I'm like, whoa.
Yes.
This is stuff I never thought would ever happen. But
No. The only thing you can guarantee is that somebody will misuse whatever you thought was the obvious like solution, right? Like guaranteed every time.
it's hilarious, man. Yeah, we saw some folks using tools that could get scissors out, or they'd get
You're like, man, all you have to do is just tear it. It's right there.
pinch and tear, man. It's even got a little nick in it, so that
Got a
makes
thing
it
on it
easier.
right there. Yeah, I know. No.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, listen, man, I wanna move on to a section of our show where we do some get to know you questions, and these are a little lighter for the most part. There's a couple of them in there, might be a little not quite so light, but they're. If we can move on to that, you game?
That sounds good. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so listen, this is called the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, and that is the tagline for our electrolyte. It's called Salty Electrolytes. So, Go Earn Your Salt is our tagline there. But we named this podcast after that. Okay, when you hear the term "Go Earn Your Salt," what comes to mind?
What I think of is like, is if you want to make a difference in the world, like, or if you want to see the world change, or sitting back and just complaining about stuff or wishing something could be different isn't good enough. That you've got to go out and do it yourself. Like if you want to see something happen, then make it so. And like that's kind of what I think of is like just go do it. Like go earn your salt. Like don't just put your money where your mouth is in a lot of ways, or just go out there and get it done.
I love it. I love it, man. Jim, what's your favorite pastime?
I mentioned I'm an avid golfer, and like I do love it, but I hate it at the same time. Like any other golfer, like you beat yourself up about things. But on any like when the weather's nice, though, that is what I love to do. I love to get out there and golf.
It's one of those sports, man. I always tell people. So if you've listened to any of the other episodes, I'm a jiu-jitsu athlete, but but I golfed for a while, and there's so many similarities in it that it just blows my mind. But it's that, I'll miff 100 shots before I catch that one perfect one.
Yeah.
But then I'll come back for 100 more crappy ones just because I felt it.
That's the beauty. I think what I do love about it, even though I beat myself up about it, like I think it is like I love that it's it can be a competitive thing if you want to compete with your buddies or whatever, but it is really just like it's yourself. Like you can get out there, and I do like that for a couple hours I can get outside and be outside in the fresh air and like not think about anything else and just like focus on doing this one task. And golf is hard, like it's not just I'm gonna go take a walk. Like for me, I actually like having a difficult task to focus on. I like doing crosswords too, and like things like that just like kind of keep my mind sharp and active. It's the same kind of thing. Like I just like having something that is actually kind of a challenge to give myself and get out there and do that I can also do on my own. And yeah, it's super fulfilling when you do get that one good shot that works really well. And it's like, and the game is made almost designed so that you can have one terrible golf hole. You have an 8 or a 9, whatever. Oh, you blew up, like it's awful. there's always the next tee. Like you just like walk away from it, and now you got a fresh start. Like 18 times each round, you've got a fresh start. So it's kind of made that way of like you fail, you get back up, do it again.
Oh, that's a cool perspective. Actually, I never really thought of golf that way, but you're right.
Neither had I either until just now, and actually I kind of like that. I'm gonna keep that.
You're
in
gonna
mind.
keep that one in there. Love it, man.
Yeah,
Jim, what's
cool.
something quirky about you that people don't know?
Oh, wow. What is something quirky about me? I do a lot of voices. My kids and my wife know this. But like, I do a lot of like silly voices and things, or like, I don't know, I don't even realize half the time I'm doing it. And like my kids do it now. I guess if you spend any time around me, I do like to have fun, and that's just one of those things that I can do, like you use silly accents for things, or, make up little characters or whatever. That only comes out when I'm in amongst the closest of friends or in my family. So yeah.
So you're not gonna show us on the podcast, huh?
I'm not gonna bust it out on a podcast, but like it's fun. We love spending time together with with the kids and with my wife. We've got a really tight knit group. So yeah, that's a lot of fun to just be silly around them.
Oh, that's awesome, man. What's your favorite naughty food?
Oh man, I am such a dessert like fiend. I will eat dessert first, like because I feel like why spoil? I don't want to spoil my dessert with like dinner. So like, and it's I know it's going to be a problem for me eventually, but I do really love like cakes especially, and things like my daughter made a little while ago. She's gonna like laugh if I mention this again, but she like whipped up this like. She kind of combined just a couple recipes. Like she's a great baker, my daughter, and she's in college, and she made this like orange chocolate cake with this like pistachio cream icing, and like, God, like it was amazing. Like it blew me away. So I've been begging her to make it ever since. So I just desserts in general, but like especially those kinds of like cakes and stuff, I just go crazy for.
Oh my gosh, sounds Jimmy. Do you have a nickname?
You're thinking dark coffee, and you're thinking a nice cup of black coffee.
Oh yeah, cake. Yeah,
Slice of cake. Sounds good.
Do you have a nickname, Jim?
Do I? I guess I do. I guess Jimothy. So it's like we had a friend. We had a friend of the family, like their younger daughter, like years and years ago, where we were talking about people's names and things, and like my name's Jim or whatever, and somebody was like, they said that Jim was short because it's short for James, but it's like it's not really short. But she was a little kid, and she was trying to figure out what Jim was short for. And she's like, "Is that short for what, Jimothy?" And we just thought that was hilarious, and we're like, "Yeah, why wouldn't it be? It should be short for Jimothy." So like that's kind of become my go-to nickname.
That is fantastic, man. And then those things just stick, right?
It just sticks. It was funny, and now everyone's like, that's what's on like my if we do like a video game, like your online your moniker or whatever, like it's always Jimothy. That's what it always is for me.
Oh, I love it, man. What's the scariest moment of your life?
Wow. Yeah, that is an interesting question.
See, they were light questions right up to that one, and it gives you whiplash.
Yeah. So, I mean, having kids is a scary experience, right? And in general, even just existentially, like going from that, like just being yourself, to having like this tiny creature which is dependent upon you and that you've brought into the world. But my I know when my son was born, he was like, he had kind of like some complications, like in the womb, whatever. And so like my wife had gone in just for like a pre-checkup or whatever. He wasn't ready to like, and they were like, the doctor called me like, yeah, you need to come to the hospital now. Like we're basically, he's coming out. Like your son's getting born now, and just that time frame of not knowing. He's totally fine. Like, and he got through everything, and he's a trooper. Even as a little kid, he was like super strong. But like, there was a time frame there where like my wife and I were just really nervous and really worried for him. That was probably the scaredest I've been, like for real, in my life. So, yeah. But thank everybody that he's awesome as he is now, and he's a healthy healthy 16-year-old running around. You can beat me up now probably, but it's yeah. And when something happens to your loved ones like that, like there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah, it's scary stuff, man. Jim, in your life, thinking about learning experiences, what's been the most valuable learning experience you can remember?
Oh man, wow. I do think that the experience at my previous company, when my business partner, and he had brought me in, as a partner. Like he had already founded the company, and so he kind of invited me. Sweat equity. I worked for years to basically get onto as a partner. But I'm not an MBA guy. Like I didn't know. Like I went to art school. I'm a designer, and so he was a designer too. Like so we're like, well, part of my job was to help grow the company so that he could be able to sell it, maybe to me, maybe to somebody else, but basically be able to grow it so that he could retire. And that experience of like, how do I do that? Like, how do I learn like on the job how to become like a CEO basically? How do I learn to become a business leader so that I can like effectively do this and like help my business partner be able to kind of move on to his next stage, and to do that while we're also running the business. It was the most, like those like 8 years or so was the most professionally that I had grown in my entire life. Like the leaving of that experience after we sold the company was like, I had really grown so much in understanding like how that's done in a way that I never could have done from before. And it was also just it was really satisfying to see, how much work I had to do it wasn't just about me. It was like the biggest takeaway there in that whole experience was learning about how to build a team. And I couldn't just do it myself. Like I had to get the right ingredients together to be able to make that work. And that was something I still think of today. We talked about like as a partner, like I didn't want to just start a roasting company on my own. I really wanted to do this with somebody else because I saw the value in working even as a small team. And that takeaway from that whole experience of being able to do that and to grow this thing and have it be successful was a really, really satisfying part, the most satisfying part of my professional career to this point. So yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Oh, that's good stuff. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow. That's a tough one. Because I get a lot of good advice. I've had some really good mentors over the years who have really kind of like, through that whole experience of learning that it's not all on you. Like your job, whether it's in any organization, right? Like whether it's in politics or if it's in business or in your family, like it's not all about you. Like it's not all on you, right? And so learning how to let go of certain things and trust people was a really important thing that I learned from my business partner, but also I worked with an outside consultant who's become a very good friend of mine during that whole transition time, and he really helped me a lot in that whole process. And I feel like that has helped me grow as just a person, not even just as a business person, but like as just a person. To like, you've got to trust your team. You've got to be able to lean on folks, and everything's going to get better if you're not just owning it all yourself or taking it all on yourself. So I think that's a really good point of advice.
That's interesting how you put that, because it takes your team outside of those people you directly work with, right? Because there's mentors and there's friends you just ask advice from, or other business owners that you go in and say, hey man, what'd you do to solve this? They're all part of that team, right? They're part of the knowledge base that you go into something with.
Yeah, trust, like the value of a network, and that includes your family too, right? Being able to lean on your spouse or with certain things, or trust them with certain judgments. And it's blending all of those aspects of your life so that it's not just totally sequestered, or like, oh, this is business me or this is home me. Like it's all kind of connected. But yeah, the team is outside of just like not people you're managing, but yeah, your whole ecosystem. That's that's where a lot of that learning comes from to me, like just having people you can lean on.
Yeah. Jim, what's an item on your bucket list? Something you want to do before it's all over?
I want to travel. I love traveling, and we've done a fair bit of it, but we haven't really. I haven't at least gotten super far outside my comfort zone. I several years ago, for business, when I was working with my previous company, I had an opportunity to go to China, and I spent just one day in Hong Kong, and I was there with a guy who could speak the language, and so he was kind of my guide or whatever. But it was like so different from anything else I had ever seen, and it was like, wow, man, like there is so much of the world out here that I would love to see, and so definitely traveling to some more different places, like maybe getting outside of the real easy ones would be something I really want to do. It'd be a shame to just kind of, like I said, born and bred in New England. I love it here, but like, yeah, I want to see some more stuff. That's it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Jim, what's your favorite book? Something you think everyone should read?
Oh wow, boy, I'm like, I read a lot, but I read like weirdly. I read a lot of like, I like nonfiction. I do read some fiction stuff, but I will like just dive into a topic and just buy a bunch of stuff from that. And I usually get about 3/4 of the way through every book I read, and then I stop, and then I move on to the next one. So like, I'm not sure if I've finished a lot of books, but I've started a lot. But probably like one of the people that I went back to and read a lot of his books is Michael Pollan, the food writer. Really is where he kind of started, and like the Omnivores Dilemma, and he wrote several books about like eating plants, and so he kind of like through all of his books went through this whole like kind of journey, and then he also wrote a book about kind of expanding or about what consciousness is. So it's actually his most recent book is, I'm going to blank on the actual name of it, but it's all about basically what human consciousness is and what the latest like science is behind it, what researchers are doing. But it's really fascinating because it just opens up how much we don't know about ourselves, like our own. It's all about like our brain is the only way that we can learn about our brain, and so it's so self-referential, but nobody really understands how it is that we are all experiencing what we are experiencing right now. And it's super humbling. It's exciting to know that there's so much that we don't know about the world and even about ourselves. But I just love the way he writes, and I love the topics he goes into. I love any of his books. I think are worth picking up and reading. I think it's always an interesting read.
That's that idea that realizing how much we don't know. There's we feel like sometimes in our society that we kind of know pretty much everything, but it's not even close, man. The more subject matter I get into, I'm like, oh, that too. So we we scratch the surface on so many different things.
Yeah,
it's wild.
We don't know anything. Yeah. We know just barely enough to get ourselves into trouble, right? Like that's basically about as much as we know.
Well, Jim, tell us where you can be found on the social media, on the internets.
On the internets, on the interwebs. You can find, so our website is wavelength-coffee.com. And yeah, you can find out all about us there and buy any of our products there. We ship anywhere in the US, free shipping on anything over $40, which is like just a couple cans of coffee usually gets you that. And we're also most active in the socials on Instagram. And that's Wavelength Coffee, all one word, on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn too. If you just look me up, Jim Varney, and there is a page for Wavelength that's associated with me too. But I've been on business for 30, 25 plus years or whatever. So yeah, I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. It's definitely just for more of the business kind of stuff. That's probably the best way to contact me.
Great, man. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on. This was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's always cool to talk with guys in the startup phase, right? Because you're going through some obstacles that, again, we talked about, but you didn't expect at the beginning. Some of them you did, and and figuring out how to navigate all that is, I think, fun for listeners to hear. So appreciate you coming on and telling your story, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. And you know what? Let me get you some dark roasted coffee and see if you like it. I would love to send you a can of that. So
Heck yeah.
If I don't have, send me an email. We've been kind of going back and forth, but send me your address, and love to get you a can, see if you like it.
Yeah, man. I'll send you some electrolytes too. We'll reciprocate that. So.
Yeah, I need that when I'm out golfing and I'm sweating in the summer. Like, I definitely need
Absolutely.
some electrolytes for sure.
That's it, man. All right, Jim. We'll go earn your salt, my friend.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hey, you've just finished up this episode, and I want to know, are you or someone you know a getting after it, go earn your salt type of person? If so, message me directly on Instagram at the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, and perhaps we can have you on the show. Also, if you like this content, leave us a review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And perhaps this podcast can help you and them go earn your salt.